Seth and I have been best friends for the past 8 years. And while we have some interests and hobbies that overlap, for the most part, we enjoy very different things. We're not pros, we're just fanboys. Welcome to the Lonely Fanboys, the podcast where we catch you up on what we care about. I'm Joe.
I'm Seth.
And Seth, at the time of this recording, we are at May 4th.
May the 4th be with you, Joe.
And also with you.
Let us give our thanks and praise.
So naturally, on May the 4th, we thought, what better thing to talk about than the Star Wars franchise?
Gotta talk about Star Wars, even though we're
Gotta
bad at...
talk about Star Wars.
We're bad at episode planning, so this isn't going to come out until well after May the 4th. But it feels good for us right now in this moment right here.
Yeah, we'll get better in the future.
Yeah, we're doing our best.
But before we talk about Star Wars, let's ask a few questions, Seth.
You got some questions for me, Joe?
I got a few questions for you, Seth.
Great.
We like to start our podcast off each week with the 5 questions. Those questions are, what are you playing? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? And for every great podcast, we need a visual representation. What are you wearing?
The only fashion-forward podcast on the whole internet.
So, Seth, I gotta know, what have you been playing?
So this week, I've been playing another one of my birthday gifts that just keep rolling in. This one is the Untitled Goose Game.
Yes.
Which, was popular a little bit ago, but I'm finally getting on the bandwagon, finally putting the rake in that lake, finally stealing the bell, doing all those goose things, causing mischief and mayhem all across that great, great town that has a goose in it.
Oh my gosh.
It's a great little indie game. Pretty quick. It's a puzzle game, I would say. But it's a non-traditional puzzle game. You're just a goose who's trying to steal stuff and cause mischief and mayhem. But the townspeople are much bigger than you and a little faster than you sometimes, and so they can stop you from causing your mischief. So it's super cute and funny, and it's a weird little game.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as this was announced on a Nintendo Direct, I think the whole world just fell in love with this game because everyone knows that jerk goose that they don't want to go near. They've seen the YouTube videos. Everyone mutually hates geese.
Yeah.
So to make a game where you play as that goose, everyone just fell in love with immediately.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. It's been great.
And it's so much fun. What was the last puzzle that you had to solve?
I think it was getting the bell. That's the end of that's the end of the game, right?
Okay, so you actually beat the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
I'm a pro gamer, Joe.
Yeah. I loved the game, and I know some people, even though they loved the game, I know a big issue is that it is pretty short.
Yeah.
Did you feel satisfied at the end?
So before playing the game, I had watched a ton of other people play through the game, so I was able to burn through the game really quickly just because I kind of knew what to do already. But I found still a ton of enjoyment in doing the thing. The game, I feel sustains itself. I don't believe it's terribly expensive. I got it as a gift, so I don't know, but it's not a $60 AAA title.
No,
and
definitely.
So,
I think it's in the $10, $20 range.
Right. So for that, I don't know. One of my favorite games that I played this year is Katana Zero. That game took me 5 hours to beat.
Right.
I'm not a person who needs 60 or 120 or 200 hours of straight gameplay to feel like I got my value out of a game. I want a good game that does the thing that it's trying to do, and then when that thing is over, then you're done.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like this game's a great game. What have you been playing this week, Joe?
So I learned something new about my wife, Seth.
Well, Joe, this is a family-friendly podcast.
It's okay. It is family-friendly. I learned that Anna had never played a Sims game as a kid.
Sure.
Yeah, and you know, in my town growing up, Sims was a huge game. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, it didn't run on many computers back in the day. In my experience, I had a bunch of crappy computers.
Yeah.
And I had that one friend that I would go over to their house almost exclusively just to play Sims on their computer. So after learning that, I booted up the PlayStation, and Sims 4 was a free game that I had gotten a while back on PlayStation Plus. Yeah, so we started playing through it, and we made a household with Elphaba and Galinda.
Oh, good.
Yep, and made them completely on brand with their characters in Wicked, and we've just been having so much fun with it.
So do they fight all the time, constantly?
Pretty much.
That's
pretty
great.
much. We made Elphaba like a loner who doesn't want to be around anyone, and we decided that she would be a painter and a gardener.
Great.
So she just likes to like hang out in the backyard and do her thing. Meanwhile, Galinda is like a serial romantic. So she's constantly trying to bring like guys and girls home.
Yep.
And yeah, it's so funny. And every time she brings someone home, Elphaba will end up like getting in a fight with that person. It's so funny.
Sims is such a good game. It's held up for so many years. I remember playing The Sims when I was like little. I was like 5 or 6 at my cousin's house, and we just like one like holiday or something while the adults were out doing adult things, we just like all sat around on the floor around a laptop and just like played The Sims. And I remember like my cousin like sitting outside so her sim could get abducted by aliens and then become pregnant. You know.
Yep.
Yeah, The Sims was a pretty big part of, I think, a lot of people in our generation's childhood.
Yeah, but yeah, and Anna totally fell in love with it, and then it actually transitioned to what I've been watching this week.
What have you been watching, Joe?
Well, Anna got so hooked on Sims 4 that she started watching like Let's Plays.
Oh, sure, okay. She's a real gamer.
Oh yeah, and so she came upon BuzzFeed's 100 Baby Challenge.
What is that?
So this girl, Kelsey Impeachache on BuzzFeed, she's been playing through Sims 4 with this challenge, this 100 Baby Challenge, where she has to be a lone matriarch in her house, and she has to get a baby daddy for each individual kid, and just like the name suggests, try to have 100 babies. 100 babies. And you can't modify the game, so you can't have a household of more than 8 people. So you have to fully age them out and move them out before you can continue having more kids. And she started watching it, and she put it on the TV, and I started watching it with her, and I got hooked immediately. And now it's just been what we've been watching, like while we eat dinner and stuff. Just like the tale of this woman trying to continue this family, and at first like she really cared about each like child and like really cared about them, but now we've just gotten to child 11.
Okay.
And you can like she's just like kind of going through the motions now, and like has kind of got it down to a system.
How does your sim not die over that time period?
I mean, you can, when it's your characters, you can choose when they age up. So I think you can just choose not to make her, because she's like a young adult, and so you're just choosing not to make them grow up.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so you can have infinite babies in theory, but you have to manage your whole household.
Yes,
wow.
Yes, but yeah, and so between playing Sims and watching Sims, we have been having so much fun.
That sounds like an amazing way to spend a week, honestly.
It has. What have you been watching?
I have been watching a series that's on Disney Plus. It's called Buried Stories of the Bible with Albert Lynn. It's a little 2-part documentary. Albert Lynn is some sort of geologist, I think, or something. Basically his job is to fly a drone around places and use a LiDAR scanner to like scan stuff that's hidden. He has this whole other show called Lost Cities or something with Albert Lynn that's also on Disney Plus. Also very good, where he just like goes to like forests that have like ancient structures hidden in them, but the trees have grown up too much and like people can't get in there. And he just like takes this little drone and he like flies it around, and then on his computer program and he's like, let's just delete all the trees out of there and see what's underneath. And then you look and there's like all these buried ruins under there, and he's like, if we can ever get in there, we can see all that stuff. and
then they just don't.
No, because it's a protected site and you cannot cut down those trees.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
But he's like, now we know what's down there, and we didn't have to destroy anything.
Cool.
So Buried Stories of the Bible is this guy Albert going around to he's covering two stories. He's covering the parting of the Red Sea, and then the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he's trying to find evidence that these things could have actually happened. And I'm not going to spoil the show because it's very interesting and a good watch, and it's quick. It's just like 2 45-minute episodes. But the things he finds actually were very interesting to me. I think he finds some really, really cool, compelling stuff that I really want to talk about with people, but I'm not going to talk about it with you because you haven't seen the show and don't want to spoil it for you. I want you to experience that yourself. So
I'll have to check it out.
Buried Stories of the Bible with Albert Lin on Disney Plus. Also, it's a National Geographic thing, so if you have a Nat Geo subscription, you can get it there too.
Very cool.
I think it's also on Hulu. It's a great time. So Joe, what have you been listening to this week?
So I was delivery driving yesterday, and while I was driving, I had the desire to listen to the Steven Universe movie soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
So I was driving and trying to be safe, so I opened up the Google Siri program, because I'm an Android user.
Yep.
And I said, hey, okay, Google, play the Steven Universe soundtrack.
Great. And
so it started playing it, but it played the Spanish soundtrack.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah. And so at first I was like, oh, I'll just change this out. But I was having so much fun listening to this adaptation of it. I've listened to the original soundtrack so many times. Right. And so I have the whole thing playing in my head of how it should go. And so the slight variations of how these characters do the voices and how just how Steven talks is very funny. He, I'm so used to Steven's voice, and he's more he's just got a slightly deeper voice, which was surprising to me. And Garnet doesn't have that chill monotone voice.
Oh, interesting.
It's got a slight more character to it. And then I also noticed that there's one joke in the song where Steven's dad Greg is teaching Pearl how to play the bass.
Okay.
And she says, Greg has been teaching me how to play the bass. BASS spells bass. Ha ha ha. But in Spanish, the joke isn't the same.
No, not at all.
And they didn't even try to make it make sense in Spanish. So they were just I can't. I think they called it a banjo instead. BANJO spells. It was just very funny.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so glad Google gave you that gift this week.
It was a great little gift. Thank you, Google. What have you been listening to?
Completely on the other side of the spectrum. I've talked on this podcast already about All Time Low and how much I love All Time Low and just pop punk music in general. All Time Low is kind of, an older pop punk band. What I was listening to this week is a newer pop punk band, but they still sound like the old pop punk, which is great. The band is Waterparks. The album is called Fandom. It's been kind of blowing up on TikTok.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their song, I Miss Having Sex, but at least I Don't Want to Die, is a TikTok trend and has been for a while. It's a good song. Good song off the album.
What's the sample that it uses?
I miss having sex, but at least I don't want to die.
Oh, just that's the words.
Yes, and also the title of the song.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that.
Okay,
but very cool.
I'll send you some. Yeah, so that's where I heard about this band, but then I went and listened to the rest of the album, and I was like, wow, this is actually just a super solid pop punk album, and I love that.
That's awesome.
Pop punk is coming back in 2020. We're bringing it back, bringing emo back.
Finally,
so everything's coming around. It's gonna be great. We're gonna love it.
I am starting to really appreciate TikTok for turning me on to songs
I know
I just haven't listened to. I scroll through it. I see enough trends and I'm like, oh, I kind of like that song, and then I look it up. Like I never really listened to The Weeknd until the Blinding Lights, that dancing trend started, and I love the song now.
The Weeknd is so great, and I have a great story about their song Starboy, which we cannot talk about on this podcast. We'll talk about it in another episode.
Okay.
But yeah, TikTok's full of bangers. Speaking of TikTok, people on TikTok have great fashion, and obviously we've taken their advice for our show. So Joe, fashion mogul, what are you wearing?
Okay, well, I think I've worn this outfit already on the podcast. So
a
repeat, and it's not the hoodie, unfortunately. I'm wearing a blue shirt.
Favorite hoodie.
I'm not wearing the fan favorite hoodie.
If you want Joe to wear the hoodie again, email us at thelonelyfanboys@gmail.com.
I'm just wearing like a blue t-shirt and a button up that kind of matches the colors, kind of going for a blue aesthetic. But what I do want to highlight is my new do.
Oh, your new do.
Ooh, my new do.
Where'd you get that do, Joe? All the barbershops are closed.
All of the barbershops are closed except Anna's barbershop, Anna's grooming. Anna gave me this nice haircut to clean myself up. She was commenting a few too many times that I was looking shaggy.
Oh no!
So thought I'd let her clean me up. And I really like how I look. I think I look awful cute.
I'm really glad she was like willing to criticize you, but then also like do the thing to like make it better as well.
She's awesome.
She's great. Your hair.
Yeah?
Your hair looks awesome. That's all I was gonna say.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So Seth.
Yes.
Seth.
Yes.
Sethy,
oh no!
Seth,
I forgot
Seth.
again. I forget every time.
Seth.
Yeah.
Sethy, Seth.
Yeah.
What are you wearing?
It sounds better on your new microphone, at least.
Well, that's good.
It's easier on the ears. I am wearing just this nice little pink floral shirt. I might have worn this on the podcast previously, too.
Oh, no.
I can't remember. This is the shirt that I dropped a piece of meat on the first time I wore it. Which I feel like I've maybe told that story on the show before.
Oh, no.
It's a nice little thing. And then on the bottoms, we got some sweatpants. And those are my socks. I held them up to the camera for people who are listening, not on YouTube. It's just a gray Adidas sweatpants, and then some nice green pizza socks.
Very nice. Ooh, to go with the meat-stained shirt.
I'm nothing if not on brand. And to go with your theme, this is how good of a co-host I am. To go with your theme, the lights in my room that I change every week are blue this week.
Wow.
So we're matching. I'm matching your blue shirt.
What an honor.
You're so welcome.
So Seth,
yeah.
What have you been reading?
Well, Joe, I'm a man of literature. This highly sophisticated individual over here.
Yes, and quite.
I've been rereading one of my favorite classics this week.
Oh, yes.
The classic by a man named William Shakespeare. Have you heard of him?
Shakespeare?
Yes.
I don't think I've heard.
Oh, well, he's a wonderful playwright. I think he's really going places.
Wow.
I think someday, maybe give it 400 years, he'll be super big. I've been reading Much Ado About Nothing this week.
That's awesome.
It's my favorite Shakespeare play, at least my favorite Shakespeare comedy. I feel like you can't really compare the comedies and tragedies. They're just different things.
Yeah.
That's okay. I love this show. And this week I've been reading it. Sometimes when I read plays, I like to read them out loud. I think plays are like better to be heard.
Right.
But you got to give all the characters different voices. And so this week it really struck me that like Much Ado About Nothing is set in Italy. And so I was like, what if they were all like New York Italians?
Oh wow.
So
that's something.
I've been reading several of the characters in like thick Italian accents, and let me tell you, it makes the show even funnier. And I think I would kill to see that show performed that way. Or like I had this idea too. Like, what if it's Much Ado About Nothing, but it's just Jersey Shore? I'm copywriting that idea. Copyrighted right here. TM. You can't produce that show. It's my idea. If you do it, I will find you. I will sue you. But I think it's a wonderful idea. Catch me performing that on Broadway 5 years from now.
That is so funny. I just gotta ask, what do you like so much about Much Ado?
I think it's a super clean show, and
Okay.
and it's also the show that I think translates the best to the modern day of all of Shakespeare's shows. Like,
sure,
he's an incredible writer and poet, obviously, and also unavoidably, a lot of his language is still like steeped in his time,
right?
And like, you know, he has some very funny characters in other shows, but so many of their jokes are like references to things that were happening in the 1600s that just like don't really make sense to modern audiences anymore.
Totally.
But Much Ado doesn't really have a lot of that. It's just it's stuff that's super relatable about romance and finding love and hanging out with your friends and, you know, coming back home. What does it mean to be a family? What does it mean to be all together in a place? How do you respect people? It's so much more about like the human condition than it is about like its setting.
Definitely.
So it makes it super translatable. And the show is there are so many jokes in that show that are just still super funny today. Like you could watch it and like pretty much get it and laugh your butt off. It's a great little piece. I love it a lot.
That is awesome.
Joe.
Yes.
What have you been reading this week?
I have been reading our fan mail.
Fan mail. We need a theme song for our fan mail.
We'll figure it out. Fan mail. It's time for the fan mail.
That's it. That's the one right there.
So this comes in from the OG fan.
The OG fan.
The OG fan.
Who could that be?
And it says, "Hello, fanboys.
Hello.
I have enjoyed listening to your podcast, and I look forward to each episode every week. Oh. I have been listening since day one. Wow. My question is, of the actors who played Batman in the movies, which is your favorite, your least favorite, and somewhere in the middle? You don't have to rate them, just like 3.
Oh, okay, good, because we don't do ratings. We don't do rankings anymore.
Don't do ratings.
It's not what we do. It's not what we're about.
Until it's convenient for us.
Yeah. Till the money starts coming in again. So, Joe, our resident Batman expert, would you like to give your answers first?
Yes, I think I'll just give my best and worst.
Okay.
I think if we did the middle, there would be too much. So my favorite Batman has to be Kevin Conroy. He voiced Batman in the animated series and the video games, and has done a bunch of other voice acting for Batman. And when I think of Batman, I just hear that voice. And so like he's just the perfect Batman.
Cool. Who's your worst?
Oh, he did a fine job, but I just did not enjoy Ben Affleck as much as I wanted to.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, I mean, Batman v Superman definitely has his problems. There was a few things that I took from it that I enjoyed. Emphasis on few.
Hey, no negative energy here.
No negative energy. But yeah, I thought he did a really great job as Bruce Wayne. But then
I would agree.
He kind of fell flat when he had to be Batman, which is like the important part in my opinion. And so that's kind of where he fell flat for me.
As an actor, he's just not the superhero type.
Right.
I just don't think he should be playing superheroes.
Right.
Are you ready for my hot take?
I am so ready for your hot take.
I'm gonna do the same thing. My worst would probably also be Ben Affleck. Just
sure.
Like you said, really good Bruce Wayne. That was very interesting. Yeah, just the whole Batman thing was not his forte. That's fine. My favorite Batman, again, not the best. Favorite.
Your favorite.
Will Arnett.
Wow.
The Lego Batman movies. I think for what those movies are,
totally
he nails it. I laugh my little butt off every time.
Yes.
He's so funny.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I completely, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, did he do it in like an animated one? And then I remember what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yes. He is so funny.
I think he also benefits from like the years of the decades of Batmans that have come before, and so there's this established brand of Batman that he gets to riff on in his own little comedic way, but boy does he nail it.
Oh my gosh.
Gotta love
it's
me
so
some Will Arnett Batman.
Yes.
Oh
my gosh.
Would maybe love to see him play it physically. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm just gonna. I have to tell the story.
Okay.
So I met Will Arnett.
You what?
I met Will Arnett in New York.
Oh, I remember this story.
Yeah, I hate telling the story. So I went to New York with my dad, and we went into FAO Schwartz. I don't think it's around anymore, but it was a really great toy store. And we were walking around. I have to tell it.
Is this your secondhand embarrassment?
Yes. And so we're walking around, and I see him in the Nintendo section, Will Arnett.
Yeah.
And I get so starstruck.
Well, he's Will Arnett.
So starstruck. Yes. And I mean, like, he had been in a lot of stuff that even then I was a lot younger at the time.
And that's like when Arrested Development was still like really popular, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I loved watching that show with my parents. So I was just blown away, and I was like, he's a celebrity. I need to go talk to him. This is my time. And so I went up to him, and I was like, "Hi, I'm Joseph." And I extended my hand, and then realized that his hands were full.
Oh, nice.
Right? He had just toys and toys. And he was like awkwardly like, hi, and like didn't extend his hand. And I was like, do you need help with that? And I offered to help him, and he was like, no, that's okay. And then I didn't know what to do. So I asked him if I could take a selfie with him. And he said no. He was here with his kids and trying to be like low profile.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I walked away. And my dad like just kind of patted me on the back and said, it's okay.
Oh.
And I was embarrassed then, and I'm embarrassed now.
That's okay.
Will Arnett, if you ever listen to this podcast, I'm so sorry.
But we love you as Batman.
We love you as Batman. You're an amazing Batman. Oh gosh. Well, I'm gonna keep cringing a little, but I need to make some money. Why don't we go make some money so I can feel better about this?
Boy, I would love that. Let's go make some money. Joe, I've got it. We can make money all on our own now.
Whoa, that's amazing. How?
Well, we got all the stuff to record podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So let's just sell our voices.
Like Ariel?
No, silly. With our impressions.
Oh, okay. So, like, when people have certain situations come up and they don't know how to deal with it, they can use our voices.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, what do you think you can do?
Well, I've been practicing some Star Wars impressions.
Oh, that's perfect. It's May 4th. That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to tell somebody they were romantically interested in, that they like loved them or something, what would you say?
I hate sand. It's coarse and rough, and it gets everywhere. Not like you. You're smooth and soft.
Yeah, that's perfect, Joe. Spot on. And if you were playing King of the Hill with somebody and you were winning, what would you say to them?
Don't do it, Anakin. I have the high ground.
Oh, that's amazing. And then if you're in a heated campaign for political office and then you win...
I am the Senate.
Oh, that's incredible, Joe. You sound just like the real thing.
Let the hate flow through you.
Yeah, your impression's great. Let's get back to the episode now.
If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can ever.
Yeah, that's great. Can we wrap things up now, please?
Did I ever tell you the tale of Darth Plagueis
Joe,
the Wise?
There's no time for this. We need to end the bit now.
Do it. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. It is May the 4th, so we can't get around it. We got to talk about Star Wars.
You bet we do. It's been a franchise that we've both enjoyed for a long time, I think, Joe.
Absolutely. Seth, I just got to start off the bat. What was your introduction to Star Wars?
So when I was about 8 or 9, I think, my mom borrowed from her brother, my uncle, us a box set of Indiana Jones and a box set of the Star Wars prequels.
Wow.
And so I watched the first 3 Indiana Jones movies. I watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull later.
Yeah.
Great film. We'll talk about that later. And then I watched The Phantom Menace. And then after that, I watched no more Star Wars movies for like a couple of years.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Then later on, a friend of mine and I, we used to have sleepovers all the time, and we made it our quest to get through, at that time, all 6 Star Wars movies. This
That's
is
awesome.
probably the later 2000s, I think, at that point.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
But I my first Star Wars movie was The Phantom Menace at about 8 years old, and I was like, seems fine. Doesn't seem like it's for me though.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first experience with Star Wars?
So, I definitely have vague memories of watching Phantom Menace with my dad as a very, very little. He had it on VHS, and we'd watch it together. But when my first memory of Star Wars, was one day watching Attack of the Clones on TV with my parents. And
wow.
I was
when
like,
movies were on TV?
Movies are still on TV. We just don't have cable.
Yeah, I know. Who has cable? Not me.
But we watched the first one, or the Attack of the Clones, on TV, and I was like, whoa, that was so cool. There are like laser swords and everything. What's going on? And my mom was like, oh, yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them. And I was like, what? There's more? And she was like, yeah, do you want to see more? And I was like, yeah. And so, she was awesome. We went to the video store that same night. And
the video store.
The video store. And we rented all of the original trilogy and episodes 1 and 2. And wow. I watched them, and I watched them, and I watched them over and over and over again until I had to return them. And then at some point I bought them because I loved them. I loved those movies, and I started with the prequels. This is going to be the first dip into controversial territory on the podcast. But the prequels were my growing up Star Wars, and so I just kind of naturally have a fondness for them. I know there's so many problems with them, and yes, Phantom Menace is painful to watch, but there's also awesome scenes that are really fun to go back and rewatch.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like in terms of like internet culture right now, we're hitting a place where, especially like our generation is like becoming adults, and we're the ones who grew up with the prequels. And so I think there's starting to be a turn towards some more prequel love out there. And I keep seeing these videos and these essays that are all about like the fight choreography in those movies, and like while the script writing was maybe not the best, there are still some people who really put their whole heart and soul into the storytelling of those films, and like for that I'm still forever grateful. And that's art through and through, and it makes watching those movies not painful, because you just have to look for other stuff than you do in the original trilogy.
Right. And I think that's kind of where we should start with this discussion of just like, the original trilogy, built a fan base.
Yeah.
And then, as time went on, that fan base grew and grew, and people started liking different things. But it all started with the original trilogy.
Yeah, so the original trilogy for me was like at first a little hard to access. I mean, I loved it, obviously, but it was made in the late 70s, early 80s, and so like that's my parents' time. Like my parents were in middle school and high school at that point.
We weren't even an idea back then.
No, like my dad, I think, went and saw A New Hope in theaters like 12 times in a row because his older brothers were working at the theaters and he could get in for free. And like that's what you did. And like, my mom's whole like high school class, like all the girls had crushes on Mark Hamill. Like, that was it was truly like their time.
Right.
And so I like the original trilogy for me is like it like watching them, I'm like aware they're like older movies. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. Like a lot of my introductions into like nerd culture came from my parents. Like my dad showed me comic books. My mom showed me musicals, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, totally. And like, but everyone kind of taught me Star Wars. It was like, that gateway drug. I took a step out of Star Wars, and I was like, what else is there? And started, grabbing other pop culture, nerd culture, and really getting into that world. And Star Wars is the thing for that.
That's really interesting to me. It makes me wonder, and I'm not a Star Wars historian by any means, but it makes me think, like, back in the, like, 70s and 80s, like, that was sort of the beginning of, like, what we know as, like, or like what we think of, like, sci-fi as now. Like, I think probably a lot of the things that were happening in Star Wars were like things that we think of now as, like, cliches of the sci-fi genre were like being invented by, because it was Star Wars and Star Trek. Exactly. Star Trek's on TV, Star Wars is in the movie theaters.
Right. I mean, when you think of, like, yeah, go ahead.
I just like other than that, I like in Britain, I guess you've got Doctor Who, but like
sure,
sci-fi was also, like, I don't know, pretty like pop culture. It's not. I don't think it was as much of this, like, nerdy phenomenon. Cause, like, my dad is a wonderful man. Wouldn't describe him as a nerd though. And I definitely wouldn't describe my mom as a nerd, but they both love Star Wars, and they've always loved Star Wars.
Right. And I think what's cool is, like, at the time when Star Wars came out, it was like this big cultural phenomenon. And then the big, like, 10-year gap between that and the prequels was when we started I'm not a historian, but it seems like that's when we started getting, like, you started seeing the Comic-Cons that were all about Star Wars and Star Trek and things like that.
Right.
And so then when the prequels rolled around, there was this huge fan base, and it was now a nerdy thing.
Yeah, and I that makes me wonder, just like from a history perspective, that makes me wonder, like, how we got there. I have no answers to that, and I'm not going to try to, like, speculate on how, like, things get pushed underground or, like, pushed to, like, subculture or anything, but that's wild that it went from, like, this mainstream thing to this nerdy pastime to where we're at today, where it's kind of mainstream again.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
And especially with, like, superhero movies and the MCU, like, a lot of these nerdy passions are sort of coming right back into the mainstream. It's this, like, very cyclical effect. And I wonder if 20 years from now, it'll be in another place where then, like, now, like, nerds are, like, subculture again. That's wild to me.
Right. I mean, at the time of recording this, it seems like we're kind of starting to dip out of Star Wars. Rise of Skywalker came out, and the general consensus was that people didn't like it. I liked it, but that's okay. The general consensus was people didn't like it, and they had Star Wars fatigue, and they needed to be done for a little while. Yep. And so now we're going to go back to us fans just kind of, like, enjoying the Star Wars movies. And then, when Disney wants to put out the next big movie, actually, I think I just read this morning that Taika Waititi is going to direct the next Star Wars movie.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And so, we're in lockdown right now, so no movies are being made.
Right.
So, I don't think it'll be 10 years until we see the next Star Wars movie, but it could be a decent amount of time.
Yeah, and also, it probably should be. Right. So the original trilogy, the sixth movie, or episode 6, releases in 1983. Prequels don't come until 1999, and then they're done in 2005. It's another 10 years until the sequels come out, and so, like, that's a good amount of time. I do want to point out, I think it's interesting, just with the 3 trilogies. The original trilogy had a movie every 3 years. The prequels had a movie every 3 years. The sequels had a movie every 2 years.
Right. And not only that, but there was a spin-off movie in between
each year. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to be critical of the sequels, because I really love that trilogy as, like, that for me was the first time I got to go see Star Wars in a movie theater, which was, like, incredible. Like, say what you will about the movies, but, like, I missed seeing the prequels in theaters. Yeah. And so when episode 7 came out, I was like, I never thought I'd get the chance to see a Star Wars movie in a theater. And now I finally do. So I will always love the sequels to death. But I think you can tell, just, like, with the way their stories are, like, a lot closer together, I think, and are trying to be a lot more, like, structured together and woven together in a way that was just different than Star Wars movies we'd seen before.
Right. And, you and I have talked about this in the past, but, with the Marvel movies, it kind of seemed like Disney wanted to do the same thing with the Star Wars movies. I think they definitely want to do the same thing with the Star Wars movies, where it became this huge franchise. They could bust out a movie every single year and people would just latch onto them, which, I mean, for the most part, they did. I think Solo was the only one that didn't financially do super well.
Yeah.
But, the big difference is, with all the different Marvel movies, it's a different character each time. A different fan base will show up for that movie, right?
Yep.
With Star Wars, it's all essentially the same story. Especially with like Rogue One and Solo, we for the most part knew those stories, and so it wasn't new information. We were just seeing that information unfold.
Yeah.
And so, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it wasn't really until Mandalorian where we start seeing a new take in the Star Wars universe.
Totally. Right before we talk about Mandalorian, I sort of want to exemplify or talk more about your point about the Marvel movies, because I think that's totally the reason that the sequels got made the way they did, is because Disney, and by extension Lucasfilms, is like in direct competition with the Marvel movies. And so you have to, when you're trying to cater to an audience that has like some major overlap there, you have to try to do some of the same things. By the same token, I think the prequels are heavily affected by like the onset of CGI, and like this not that there wasn't CGI for the original trilogy, but it was obviously 20 years worse of technology. So in the same way that the original trilogy is being made at the same time as these samurai movies, then you have the prequels being made in this like early 2000s CGI era where we're like really figuring out how computers can help us make movies. And then the sequels are being made in the MCU era. And I think that is maybe an explainer for why those, because I think all three trilogies, they do weave together, but they are also standalone trilogies.
Yes.
And you can watch them that way, which I think is a really interesting perspective.
Yep, definitely. So I think the craziest thing to me about Star Wars is you can watch the 9 movies and just walk away and think that's it. You don't even have to watch the 9 movies. You could watch 3 movies.
Yeah.
You could watch just like you had said, you can watch any 3 of the movies and pretty much, have a satisfying conclusion, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you want to take a step further, you find that there is so much Star Wars content. I mean, you can't even, I don't want to look at a library of all the Star Wars books that have ever been written.
Yeah.
Because there's so many.
I'm sure you could fill a bookstore with only, and I'm sure people have, you could fill a bookstore with only Star Wars content, between comics and novels and then video games, not to mention the movies and TV shows and spin-off movies. Like it's a wide world out there.
And what's so cool about that is I think while the movies have become very divisive, outside of the movies, people have found things that satisfy them that are Star Wars related. Someone might only like the original trilogy, and so they want to see that story continued.
Yeah.
And so they read the books that continue that story, or some of the games, right? And then the same with prequels and the sequels. Like, if there's an aspect of Star Wars that you don't feel is in some of the other Star Wars series, you can find it in some form of Star Wars media.
Yeah, and that's what's amazing is that Star Wars has empowered creators, authors, game designers, filmmakers to take whatever little nuggets of the original trilogy, or even the other trilogies, to just take whatever they want from it and then like expand it, make a pitch of a story of how you're. The perfect example is obviously Rogue One, where it's like, they talk about like, well, we got these plans for the Death Star. And then somebody went, well, how did they get those plans? And then was like, let me pitch you a 2-hour movie of how they got those plants. Here you go.
Yep.
Here's Rogue One, and Rogue One is beloved by many. Not as popular as the original trilogy, but that's okay. I don't think it was ever supposed to be.
Right.
It's there for people who want more of that story, like you were saying.
Right. And for me, like I said, I grew up with the prequels. I actually did get to see Revenge of the Sith in theaters. I was so excited. Yeah. But like my favorite fan stories are that middle ground between the prequels and the sequels. I love like the early years of Vader and like the Republic dying out and the Empire growing, and all of those stories are really cool. So like to see like Jedi Fallen Order or the Force Unleashed games, even the new Vader comics. It's really cool to see all of those. Like people come up with, here's an end of the prequels. Here's a beginning. We know, how it ends, how it begins, but we don't know what's in this middle part. Let's fill it with our ideas. And that's a really cool world for me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
What was it? So for Jedi Fallen Order, a video game that came out in 2019?
Yes.
I believe. Yeah. I have not finished it. If you're like me and you haven't finished it, we're going to talk about spoilers for the game. So go finish it or just accept the spoilers. Sorry, but I want to know what about that story that sort of, it's totally a filling in the gaps kind of story.
Yep.
Right? What parts of that were really captivating to you?
So I think one of the things that I appreciate most about all of the Star Wars movies is they all kind of tell the story of like a chosen one. And, we've had so many chosen ones in all stories, Harry Potter, Peter Parker. There's been so many chosen ones, but so a lot of times they're in their contained universe. In Star Wars, there's plenty of chosen ones, and they all have different things that they're chosen to do. And that's super cool. And so the thing I really appreciated about Jedi Fallen Order is it's another one of those stories. It tells the story of Cal Kestis, and the game starts you off by by showing you that he's working on this junk planet
with some really cool background music that he's listening to.
Cool. It's almost like the world of WALL-E, where it's just all trash, and he's scrapping this old Republic ship, and then the stormtroopers show up, and they're like, "We're looking for a Jedi," and then you discover that the character you're playing as, Cal, is that Jedi.
Oh, it's me. I'm the Jedi.
I'm the Jedi. Exactly.
Then your friend sacrifices himself for you. It's a whole thing.
Right. It's a whole thing. But, right as you're running away from these guys, you get picked up by an old Jedi master, but you don't know that yet. And you get sent out on this quest, and you come to find throughout the game, as you play the game, that your purpose, your duty, is to rebuild the Jedi Order, hence the name. You're trying to bring it back to existence, but
the Order was fallen. You're gonna restore.
The Order was fallen. You're gonna raise it back up.
I'm on to you, Star Wars.
Yep. And in the end, you have a similar Force vision experience that Rey has in Last Jedi.
Oh, sure.
Where the Force kind of tells you, you being Cal, that if you bring back the Jedi Order right now, the Republic will find all of the Jedi and kill them. So it's better to just kind of let them all of the new younglings that haven't fully discovered their powers, let them discover them organically. And, when you kind of think about it, if he had gone forward, he could have gotten like Luke Skywalker killed.
Right.
And, we might find out more about that kind of stuff in the later sequels. They're definitely making a sequel for this game with the way they wrapped it up. But it's cool that like you're kind of right in between Anakin Skywalker ruining everything and Luke trying to save everything, and you're just in the middle, and the things aren't going to be saved yet because that's Luke's job, but you're kind of holding on to hope that you can do something.
Yeah.
Which I know some fans kind of complained that kind of makes it pointless.
I don't
But
know.
yeah, I don't know. I still, I love the idea that like even though you may not save the world, you're gonna give it a shot. You're gonna do your best to do that.
Yeah, and so like I understand how like in a vacuum that would kind of feel pointless, but like taking it in the context of the broader Star Wars story, you're playing a super important role, and I think that game is like that's your explanation for why we're in the place we're in at the start of A New Hope, and like like old Ben Kenobi is like oh the Jedi used to be this, but then they've all fallen away, and you're like, well, why didn't anybody try to bring him back? This is like your
They
explanation
did,
of like,
and here's what happened. Yeah,
that was not the way it was supposed to go. That would have been
right,
very bad if that had happened. Where it's
right.
actually this was all the Force had this plan in mind the whole time. This was always
Yes.
supposed to be the way things were gonna go.
Yeah.
And that's what's perfect about these like little side franchises, these little spin-offs, is that you get that like extra little piece of the story. That I don't know, does that for you change the way that you see like Revenge of the Sith and then A New Hope, like as sort of like either side of this story now that you've gotten this new information?
There's so much discussion around those middle parts in fan communities.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to create our own version of what happened.
Totally.
And I think that's what was so satisfying to people about like Rogue One, where they got to
Yeah.
see a version of what happened to get the plans for the Death Star, right? And so for me, kind of like what you just said, that question of why didn't the Jedi rebuild sooner? Why was Obi-Wan in hiding for so long? This kind of really wraps it up in a very simple but easily understood package of just like, if they had, it would have gone really badly.
Yeah, and I think that it's like answering those questions is something that I love about Rogue One. You talked about it a little bit right there. But that's maybe my favorite or one of my favorite spin-off franchises, because
Okay, yeah.
just you get in A New Hope, you sort of get like like, oh yeah, we got these plans, we have them, and then we use them, and then like that's you have the whole rest of the plot of that movie and of the original trilogy, like all goes through all of that. But you never get that explanation of like, well, okay, how did that happen? And that I know was a source of discussion for literally decades amongst Star Wars fans of like, well, how do you get those plans? Was there somebody on the inside who was defecting? Did Vader actually plan all along for the Death Star to get destroyed? Is this some how do you as Darth Vader building this, your biggest weapon, the most important piece of like your whole arsenal, how do you let these plans slip out? And then you get this whole story that is my favorite thing about Rogue One, and I think this is true of Fallen Order too, is that it is self-contained. You
Right.
could have that be your first Star Wars experience and not feel particularly confused. Like in Rogue One, you don't see a lot of the characters that playing major roles. Like you have this whole new cast of characters that you can get to know and then cry when they die. Spoilers. It's but you get emotionally attached to like a whole new set of people, which I think is awesome. And I think that's true of Fallen Order as well, where you can play through it as a video game. Like even if you're just a video game person, you can totally just play right through that game.
Right, it's a great game.
And have a great time. And then after that, discover this whole universe of Star Wars stuff that's out there for you, that's all connected through this one story that everything's telling together. So I think that's maybe a perfect place to talk about something that breaks the mold a little bit.
Yes.
That sort of strays away from this story that we've been telling for literally 40 years. And that's The Mandalorian, which came out last year in 2019 on Disney Plus. It came out with the launch of Disney Plus. Is that right?
Yes, the
or
first
somewhere
episode
around
came
there?
out with I believe the very first episode came out with Disney Plus.
I know for me it was the thing that convinced me to get Disney Plus.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
because
it was the thing that like I decided I need to keep subscribing to this to see what happens.
Right. Because it's a story that so far, I mean, it's loosely tied still to the story that goes, the Skywalker saga, as it's called, like, prequels through original trilogy through sequels, this whole story that includes Rogue One and Fallen Order and all these other spin-offs inside of it. But this is also like, this seems like a thing that's like, we're going to tell a new, different story. And
right,
history might prove us wrong, or the future might prove us wrong. This may yet tie in somehow that we don't know, but at least the first season of The Mandalorian, which if you haven't watched it, you should absolutely watch it. Get Disney Plus just to watch it. Get a free 7-day trial and then cancel it. I don't know. It's good television just in general. It's so well made. And right. It's such an interesting and well told story. And also it's totally new Star Wars stuff, and Baby Yoda is the most adorable thing I've ever seen.
Right. I think with when the prequels came out, people didn't like that it felt like something new, right? And I like specifically the people who didn't like it.
Sure.
And then specifically with the sequels, the thing that people didn't like was that parts of it were trying to be the original trilogy, but then other parts were trying to be like this new idea, right?
Yep.
But with Mandalorian, there's no real connection, like you said, to the Skywalker saga, so they can take liberties of just like putting the character in the world of Star Wars, but telling these brand new stories that we haven't really seen before. And I think taking a few more risks that they're afraid to take with the movies.
Yeah.
And I think just because of the TV format, they're allowed to take those like bigger risks, like having Werner Herzog as a stormtrooper is so weird. It's such a weird thing, but it's also like so perfect that
it works.
I just loved it
so well. It's so
absolutely
good. Yeah, you have Taika Waititi voicing a droid, which is great. And I think it's allowed it to become a different animal from the movie. So, Star Wars, the original, like the Skywalker saga is this giant samurai movie series, right? And it's like that's sort of what it's taking from. The Mandalorian is a Western, which is similar but different in a lot of key ways.
Right. I mean, Star Wars took from samurai. Western definitely took from samurai.
Right.
Movies.
Oh, totally. Totally.
Yeah, and so it's and some people were I used to have conversations with people who were like, oh, the Star Wars movies are like, or the original trilogy are like Westerns, and to an extent they are, but it's because they're derived from these old samurai stories, right?
Right. But it feels like, sorry, go ahead.
But Mandalorian is really diving into that Western aspect and really emphasizing on that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some shots and some scenes in The Mandalorian where you're like, that's straight out of a John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
Which is cool because we've done our 40 years. Not that we can't do more of it, but we've done a lot of samurai swords, but they're laser swords.
Yep.
Right. And now we've kind of got like, gunslinger, but it's lasers, which, it's laser guns instead, it sounds super corny to say it that way, but it's actually that has opened up so much more ground inside the Star Wars universe for us to play with. And it's so interesting. And I don't know, movie tropes kind of just seem better when you take them and you put them in space.
Yeah, it's true.
Like immediately so much more interesting to me.
Yep. I think one aspect that I really love about The Mandalorian is all of the Star Wars movies are they focus on a character who is introduced to the Force, but then eventually gains Force powers. And as of right now, we're still only in the first season, but I don't think The Mandalorian is ever going to learn how to use the Force.
No.
He might like anyways, and I really appreciate that of him like experiencing the Force through Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
And being confused on what's going on, and that's something that's so fresh where he's just like, what the heck was that? And there isn't someone to be like, oh, that's the Force. It's there isn't someone to like add science to it and say that it's midichlorians or say that it's like an ancient religion. He's just like, what the heck is that? And this baby can't give answers, so he's just got to figure it out. And we as an audience know what's going on, but it's so fun to see him just so confused.
I think that's dead on. Thinking about like, where we're at now in terms of like popular media with riding through the whole MCU, this whole 23 movie saga leading up to Endgame, and then thinking about the 40 years of Star Wars, we've gotten a lot of the main character has superpowers, and the main character is like this really amazing fighter and is just so strong and is like that's your hero. And I think now there's a lot of interest in like, okay, but what about those side people though? What like what about those people like sort of on the periphery who are like there and helping, but like are not, these like gods among men, or these like incredibly powerful super beings. Like the Mandalorian is an excellent fighter. He's so good at shooting his gun and fighting and combat, but he doesn't have any like sort of like supernatural gifts or anything. He's maybe a little Force sensitive, or like the Force like helps him out a little bit sometimes, but like Baby Yoda's the Force user. Baby Yoda's the this could have easily been like the Baby Yoda TV series, and the Mandalorian would have been like a helpful side character, but now it's the helpful side character is the main character.
Yes.
Which is so fresh. It's so new. I love it.
Right. And to bring it back to the discussion about like the Chosen One.
Yeah.
The movies kind of made this understanding that anyone can be the Chosen One, but they got to have Force powers. Yeah. Right. And so now Mandalorian has just opened it up even more. Anyone can be the Chosen One.
Anybody at all. Yeah.
And it's not like a syndrome from Incredibles where if everyone's super, no one is. It's not like that.
Right.
It's like, you can be the Chosen One in your own way.
Yeah.
And you can find some way to like bring goodness to the universe, to the galaxy, right? It doesn't have to just be you killed the empire, the emperor,
Yeah. So big shout out to the Mandalorian for really adapting. I think that Chosen One story has always been so central to what Star Wars is, but it's not. It felt like you talked a little bit earlier about like Star Wars fatigue and like that idea, and this is like, well, okay, hold on. We actually don't have to be tired of Star Wars. We just need to do things a little differently,
right?
Which is really cool. And I think I want to transition that into. Do you think that's part of the reason that Star Wars has like connected with so many people, and has garnered this huge fan base? Is this idea that anybody can be the Chosen One?
Yeah, definitely. I think Star Wars over the years has shown so many different Chosen Ones, and they've been a scrapper on a junk planet, a kid who's just working on the farm with his aunt and uncle, a kid who's a slave, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen so many different people from all different types of upbringings, but they all come to find that they're the Chosen One, and that's so special, and that I think that's one aspect that really resonates with so many people, is that it doesn't matter where you come from, you can be special, you can be the Chosen One.
And it doesn't really matter where you're at in life either, because I think for a lot of these people, the moment that they find out they're the Chosen One happens on the same day or like right after the same day that they would call the worst day of their life.
Right.
Something so awful has happened, and also they found out that they are special.
Definitely. And Anakin was a toddler when he found out he was the chosen one. Luke was a teenager.
Yeah.
Jyn Erso was in her like mid-20s, and the Mandalorian is now like a maybe high 30s, early 40s guy,
like experienced, has his whole other life.
Right. Yeah. You can find your purpose. You can discover that you're the chosen one at any point.
Totally. Yeah. And so it truly doesn't matter who you are. It could be you. That's what Star Wars is trying to tell you. Like, don't give up hope. Have a new
don't give up hope.
Have a new hope. There's some other hope pun in there. But yeah, it's I think that's part of what's made it mean so much to people, and to especially to people who are really into nerdy culture and really passionate about stuff, and that sometimes that can be isolating, but you turn to Star Wars and you're like, no, it's okay, it could be me still.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be the cool, handsome, sexy, rich, popular. We're getting back into talking about Seth's middle school trauma.
Oh dear.
But you watch Star Wars and you're like, a little bit, I relate to that person, and like, that could be me, and that's nice. That's always nice to see yourself in a movie.
Well, I am so glad we got to celebrate this May the 4th together.
May the 4th be with you, Joe.
And also with you. I think that's going to do it for the Lonely Fanboys this week. I want to thank you, Seth, for talking with me about Star Wars.
Oh, thank you, Joe, for talking with me about Star Wars. I'd do this anytime.
And I want to thank you, listeners, for putting up with us probably making a lot of wrong statements about Star Wars.
But
please don't be too mean.
You know what they say, Joe.
What do they say?
We're not experts.
We're just fanboys.
You can email us at thelonelyfanboys@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @TLF_pod. This week we're going to do a new thing. We want to shout out our most recent YouTube subscribers. So thank you, Isaiah Animations, Shadow Bros 12, and Blue Campbell. If you want to be like all those cool people and you want your name in a future episode, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can ring the bell for notifications. Thank you once again to Alight the Night for our opening theme song, Consequences.
Young fool, only now at the end do you understand.
He's back, everybody.
Good night, everyone.